everyone, and welcome to Kay's Cakes, the show where I veganize your favorite recipes. It is officially fall, the season of pumpkin spice, so I decided that I'm going to show y'all how to make a vegan pumpkin pie. This crust, so we got the crust, the filling, and also a vegan whipped cream. The crust is actually the exact same recipe that I used way back in the Captain America episode for the apple pie. So we're going to start with that. The first thing we need to do is I have my vegan butter and my vegetable shortening. I'll make sure that they're very, very cold. So these have been in the fridge for a little while. Thankfully, it's not the middle of summer like it was last time I made a pie, so keeping it cold is going to be a little bit easier. So you're going to have those in the fridge before you start the bake in little squares, just because making sure you keep the crust really cold, will make it nice and flaky. So besides that, what we're going to start with is 1.5 cups of just all-purpose flour. We'll do 1 and 1/2. And then 1 tablespoon of sugar. And 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Which one of these is 1/4? There we go. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Okay, those are the dry ingredients for the pie crust. I'm just gonna whisk them together super quick. And then add my butter and shortening until it looks like a coarse sort of meal. So I have 1/4 cup each of vegan butter that's been cold and cut into cubes, and also of the vegetable shortening that's cold and cut into cubes. Both of those are 1/4 cup. I guess these are more like rectangles than cubes, but comme ci, comme ça. I'm just going straight with my hands and crumble it a little bit. You don't want to overwork it because then the butter will start to, the butter and shortening will start to get too warm and get a little melty, which is not what we want. And we also have a little bit of ice water just to help it come together. Again, making sure everything's really, really cold. So I'm going to start with 3 tablespoons, just kind of drizzle it in there. And this is something I should be using a wooden spoon for, actually, because it's going to start to come together a little bit. And if it doesn't, you just add a little bit more water until it becomes like one big dough ball. And now if I go in with my hands, it should come together really easily. Okay, so that is my dough for my crust already. And I'm gonna cover this. I would normally suggest wrapping it in plastic wrap. I do suggest wrapping it in plastic wrap or like a gallon size Ziploc or freezer size Ziploc. It doesn't really matter as long as your dough's covered. Okay, so I'm just gonna put this in the fridge. Now we're gonna move on to the filling. I'm gonna make the filling first and then roll out my dough into the pie tin, and then, yeah. I am going to preheat my oven, so preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so that's doing what it needs to do. And we're gonna start with 1 3/4 cup of pumpkin, not pumpkin spice mix, just straight pumpkin. So if you're using it out of a can, be really sure you are not getting a pumpkin pie mix. I actually have a pumpkin plant in my backyard, and this is fresh pumpkin that I just put in the blender. So this is straight pumpkin puree. So 1 3/4 cup pumpkin. I'm also going to add 3/4 cup of coconut milk. Oh, okay. All right, that was more than expected. That's too much. I only want 3/4 cup. There we go. There we go. Next is we're gonna use brown sugar instead of regular sugar for this one. So we want 1/2 cup of brown sugar. As usual, I'm using my coconut palm sugar as brown sugar instead of just regular brown sugar. So 1/2 cup. And we're also gonna add 1/4 cup of cornstarch. This is just gonna help everything come together into that like pumpkin pie texture, right? So it's not too solid, but it's not too like liquidy either. Hopefully I have 1/4 cup in here. Okay, 1/4 cup of cornstarch. And then I'm also going to add 1/4 cup of maple syrup. This is going to add a liquid element while also keeping it nice and sweet. And then we also need a teaspoon of vanilla. And here's our pumpkin spice blend. It's got some cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, allspice, and some other stuff. So there are recipes that'll just ask you to put all those spices in separately, but grocery stores do typically just have a pumpkin pie spice. So I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of my pumpkin pie spice. And also an additional 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon by itself. And the last thing is just a 1/2 teaspoon of salt as well. There we go, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just gonna mix this together. This is my whole filling. It's a really straightforward recipe. So you saw the pumpkin before was that really bright orange. And now it's, with everything mixed together, is that like really classic brown pumpkin pie look. It seems a little runny right now, but it bakes for a long time and it'll get nice and set in the oven and in the cooling time. So we do have to account for cooling time as well. Okay, so crust, really easy. Filling, really easy, right? So I'm gonna clean up a little bit and then I'm gonna roll out my dough and get it in the pie tin and put this in the oven. All right. Perfect timing. The oven is now preheated. So you always want to dust any surface you're gonna roll any kind of dough onto, unless you have like a pastry cloth, which I don't yet. So I just always put a good amount of flour on any workspace I'm gonna put dough on, as well as flouring my rolling pin. Now the good news is this is only a one crust dough. I don't know if you've seen the episode with the apple pie, but I really struggle with getting a top crust onto a pie. But we don't have to do that here. We just gotta roll this out into a good sized circle that's big enough for the pie pan. Make sure it's not too thick. You'd probably want to go about 1/4 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch, anywhere in there, depending on how you like your crust, but too thin and it could crack and leak, which is not what we want either. So I'm just putting a light amount of pressure on my rolling pin to get this to actually roll out. And make sure to switch directions so it's as circular as possible. Because my edges feel thin and my center is not quite matching. But that's more than big enough to fit in my pie pan, or to fill my pie pan. So I never figure out the best way to do this actually. Pie crust is hard. What I would try to do is honestly just flip the crust. I don't know how to do it. Where's all the spatulas? Are all the spatulas in the dishwasher?
There's one on the far right there. Is that plastic?
This is a rubber scraper. Okay, I'll use my offset. Alright, this is really like a frosting spatula, but I just want to... This is the other reason you flour the surface so your dough doesn't stick. But my dough's a little sticky. Because I flipped it over. It's stuck. Just get your hands as far underneath it as you can. And you just kind of lift and drape it. And you see that it's not quite even. Right? I have lots of overhang in some spots and not enough overhang in other spots. That's okay. My goal right there was just to get it into the pan. So to clean that up, I always have a pair of kitchen scissors that are just exclusively for food use. So, because you're gonna need to trim the edges anyway. But what you can also do is once this is done, take that extra dough and just kind of fill in some spots that are a little short. And just press in with your fingers to try to get the thickness as even as possible. And then I'm going to go back around and finish my trimming. So we have a little bit extra. There's not really anything you can do with this extra dough. So my dough's done. My tin is lined. I'm just gonna pour my filling in there. Sometimes different recipes might have you blind bake a crust, which means that you put it in the oven beforehand to make sure the bottom, like there's no seepage, because if you bake the bottom of the pie, then it'll be harder to crack once you add a filling, especially if it's a wet filling. But I'm not gonna do that today. So yeah, there's our pie crust, there's our filling, and this is gonna go in the oven for a whole hour. It's on, it's gonna spill. It's gonna spill, it's gonna spill, it's gonna spill. Okay, it's fine. Now, we could stop there, but what is a pumpkin pie without some kind of whipped cream or ice cream or something of that nature? So I'm just gonna make a vegan whipped cream really quick. One of the tricks with whipped cream is making sure all your utensils are really cold, like in the freezer cold. So I have a bowl and the whisk for my hand mixer are in the freezer right now, so I'm gonna grab those. Okay, and we're gonna do Silk dairy-free whipping cream. This is a lifesaver because you can make whipped cream with coconut milk or aquafaba or stuff like that, but you can just do it with whipping cream. I am so thankful that I am aware this exists. So I'm gonna do 1 cup of this vegan whipping cream. Just put it straight in that cold, cold bowl. Now I'm gonna get my hand mixer going. And my whisk is also very cold because it too has been in the freezer. And what you want to do is just get some air into this. Just whip it really hard until it starts to form like soft peaks. So soft peaks, you see how it was forming ridges as I moved the mixer around. That is the soft peak stage. But we don't want it to just taste like cream, because that's kind of ick. I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, so it actually has some kind of flavor. Might even get some cinnamon in there from the pumpkin pie. So 1 teaspoon of vanilla. We also want to give it a little bit of sweetness and also working as a thickener so it can get even stiffer and actually work like a whipped cream. So I'm going to do a tablespoon of powdered sugar. And if you need to add more powdered sugar to get it to stand up, then add more powdered sugar. Another good tool for sifting meringues and whipped cream is cream of tartar, which I do have, but I'm trying not to use today. We'll see. Okay, so once it's finished, once you get enough air in it, it should look something like this. Right? Like, can you lift the whisk up and it stands up? And let's do a little taste test. It tastes like whipped cream. So once my pie is done and also set, I have this lovely topping to put on it. Don't forget your oven mitts. That's Sean. Oh no! Oh no, that's so sad. Okay, I lost a little bit of filling, but there's still a good amount in there. That's really sad, but there's still a good amount of filling in there, and it is still a little jiggly. That's okay because it's still really hot. So what you want to do once you take your pie out of the oven is, 1, make sure you don't spill the filling on the oven door. And then you just want to let it cool down a little bit, and then once it's like not boiling, it needs to set in the fridge for at least 4 hours. Once it's like nice and chilled, it'll be nice and set, and then you can serve it with that yummy whipped cream we made before. But yeah, that is all for this episode. So thank you all so much for watching. Go ahead and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Comment down below any recipes you would like to see me try to veganize. You can follow along with the written recipe in the description. And also my Patreon is in the description if you want to sign up for that. You'll get some behind the scenes, early access to videos and all sorts of things like that, and all the money from Patreon goes to ingredients and baking equipment and things like that to help improve the show. Thank you all so much, and I will see you in the next one.